There's an old story Jen Sincero loves about a woman who goes deep into the forest to meet the god Krishna. She prays with everything she has, and Krishna actually shows up. He walks right up to her. He taps her on the shoulder, and without opening her eyes, she tells him to go away because she's very busy meditating on something important. We do this constantly. The exact thing we want is already walking toward us. We just weren't trained to notice it. Hi, welcome. I want to talk to you about a book. It's called You Are a Badass. It was written by a woman named Jen Sincero in 2013, and it has sat on bestseller lists for over a decade now, which is rare for any self-help book and almost unheard of for one this irreverent. Sincero swears. She makes fun of herself constantly. She calls the part of you that holds you back the Big Snooze, and she writes like she's 3 drinks in at a dinner party, explaining why you're underselling yourself. But underneath the sass is a thesis that's actually pretty serious. It's this: by the time you were old enough to have your first real opinion, the operating system running your adult life was already installed. The beliefs about what you can earn, who you're allowed to love, how much you deserve, what you're capable of, most of them got downloaded into you before you could even argue back, and they're still running. Every relationship that ends the same way, every raise you don't ask for, every dream you keep almost starting, those aren't random. They're a program, and the program isn't yours. Over the next 40 minutes, I'll walk you through the 7 ideas in this book that have helped millions of people rewrite that program. We're going to talk about the part of you that wants to keep you small. We're going to talk about why 2 people can read the same book and have wildly different lives afterward. We're going to talk about money as an identity problem instead of a math problem. And we're going to talk about the single difference between people who change their lives and people who spend decades wanting to. By the end of this video, you might know exactly which window you've been slamming yourself against and exactly where the door is. So let's begin. Section 1. The Big Snooze. Years ago, before she was a best-selling author, Jen Sincero went mattress shopping. She'd had this bowling accident. Long story. And now she was waking up at night with pain in her feet, and her acupuncturist said she needed a firmer bed. So she went to the store, and the salesman who came to help her was, by her own description, a freak show. Other salesmen stood at the foot of the bed and rattled off facts about coils and memory foam. Not this guy. This guy lay down next to her on the mattress, hands folded on his chest, staring at the ceiling, chatting with her like they were 11 years old at summer camp. She was terrified to roll over. Now, you'd think she'd ask him to get off the bed, or find another salesman, or at minimum, leave with a mattress, right? That's what a person who can advocate for herself does. Instead, she snuck out of the store without buying anything, burning her only shopping window that week. And on the drive home, she asked herself the question that this entire book turns on. Why? Why did I just do that? And the honest answer was, because I didn't want to embarrass him. She didn't want to embarrass him. The guy who lay down next to a stranger in a Macy's. She was protecting his feelings at the expense of her own back, her own sleep, her own time. And here's the part that matters. She didn't decide to do that. She didn't weigh the options and choose people-pleasing. The choice was made before her conscious mind ever got involved. Something else was driving the bus. Sincero calls that something else the Big Snooze. Here's how it works. You have 2 minds. One of them is your conscious mind, the one you're using right now to follow this sentence. It's where you analyze, plan, judge, worry. It's the relentless overachiever that spins from thought to thought from the moment you wake up. But, and this is the part most people don't know, your conscious mind doesn't fully develop until somewhere around puberty. So what was running things before then? Your subconscious, the non-analytical, fully formed at birth part of your brain that takes in everything around you without a filter. It doesn't know the difference between true and false. It just absorbs. If your parents told you nobody in your family knows how to make money, it believed them. If they showed you that marriage means yelling at each other, it believed them. If they told you about a fat guy in a red suit who climbs down chimneys with presents, yeah, you believed that one too. And here's the trouble. By the time your conscious mind shows up for work, usually around age 12, 13, your subconscious already has its blueprint. The world is dangerous. People can't be trusted. Money causes pain. You're not the smart one. Your job is to make other people comfortable. Whatever the blueprint says, it just becomes the unquestioned background of your life. Your conscious mind thinks it's in control. It isn't. Your subconscious mind doesn't think about anything, but it's the one steering. So picture this. Picture a woman who was raised by a father who was always struggling for money. He kicked the furniture. He grumbled. He was absent because he was working 2 jobs and still losing. Her subconscious watched all of this with no filter and made some decisions. Money equals struggle. Money causes pain. Money is the reason Dad wasn't around. Money is unsafe. Cut to her. 30 years later, she has read every personal finance book. She has tried every side hustle. Consciously, she would love nothing more than to be rich. But the second she gets close, something happens. The big client falls through. She blows the savings. She picks fights with her partner about the budget until they break up, and she cannot, for the life of her, figure out why. Because she's driving with 1 foot on the gas and 1 foot on the brake. Most people are. The conscious mind says marriage. The subconscious mind says intimacy leads to pain. Finger, ringless. The conscious mind says I want to lose the weight. The subconscious mind says my body keeps me safe. Body, protected. The conscious mind says I want to travel the world. The subconscious mind says fun means irresponsible. Irresponsible means unloved. Passport, blank. And the cruel part is, the harder you push with your conscious mind, the more your subconscious quietly redirects. Sincero gives this hidden saboteur a name. She calls it the Big Snooze, or just BS. And she paints it like an overprotective Italian mother who not only doesn't want you to ever leave the house, she wants you to live with her forever. Her intentions are pure. She loves you. She is terrified of what could happen to you out there. But the second you try to step out the door to the party your real life is throwing for you, she will claw, scream, lie down across the threshold, do whatever it takes to keep you safely inside the only version of you she knows how to protect. And she is very, very good at her job. This is why people who decide to change their lives often find that, right when they're closest to breakthrough, everything falls apart. The car breaks down, they get the flu, their roof leaks, their partner picks the fight of the century. It feels like the universe is conspiring against them. But it isn't the universe. It's the Big Snooze throwing a tantrum because you're about to leave her now. And this is the move that makes the rest of this book possible. You cannot fix something you can't see. So the first step isn't to attack your beliefs. It's to notice them. To start asking every time something in your life isn't working, what does the part of me that built this think it's protecting me from? What were you taught about money before you could read? What did the adults around you teach you, by example, about love? What did you learn about being seen? Because whatever those answers are, and they might be uncomfortable, that's the script your life has been quietly following. Until you read it out loud, it has all the power. The moment you say it, it starts to lose grip. That's the work this book is built on. And before we go any further, we have to talk about what makes the rewrite actually possible. Because just knowing your beliefs aren't yours doesn't change anything. You need something stronger than awareness to overwrite them. You need to control where your attention goes. Section 2. The frequency you're vibrating at. When Sincero was in her 20s, she lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she and her East Coast friends used to go to a bar called Midnight Rodeo. It was a country bar. Belt buckles the size of dinner plates, Bud Light on permanent special, a solid oak dance floor the size of a cornfield, and they would go there exclusively, to be ironic about it, to make fun of the line dancers, to spot the biggest handlebar mustache, to watch the crowd of Garth Brooks fans stomping in unison and giggle at how earnest it all was. Then one night they joined in, just to be funny, just to wave at their friends from the middle of the dance floor. Look at us. Then they stayed for the next song, to try the heel click. Then somehow they were sneaking off every weekend to merrily two-step their hearts out. And Sincero says in the book that this is exactly how the spiritual stuff happened to her too. She started out cynical. She thought self-help was for losers. She thought talk about God and the universe and energy was for the kind of people who hugged strangers at airports. But she was broke and stuck and out of ideas, so she started reading the books anyway. And slowly, almost against her will, something started to shift. So I want you to hold whatever skepticism you have here loosely for a minute, because the next idea in this book sounds on its face like nonsense, and then it turns out to be the most practical idea in the entire book. Here it is. What you focus on, you attract. I know what that sounds like. Hang with me. Forget the spiritual packaging for a second. Forget whether you believe in the universe as a being. Strip the idea down to its physical reality, and what it actually says is this: your attention is the single most valuable thing you have, and whatever you point it at gets more of itself. The thoughts you dwell on shape what you notice. What you notice shapes what you do. What you do shapes what you get. Sincero gives an example that I'm going to ask you to actually try right now. Wherever you are, look around for 10 seconds. Count everything you can see that is red, not just bright red, burgundy, salmon, dark red, all of it. 10 seconds. Now close your eyes without peeking. Try to remember everything around you that was yellow. Most of you can't. There's almost certainly yellow in your environment, but you don't have any record of it, because for those 10 seconds, your brain was a red detector. It wasn't picking up anything else. That's what your life is. If you walk around all day scanning for evidence that you're broke, that people can't be trusted, that opportunities don't come to people like you, your brain will find that evidence constantly. Not because the world is against you, because your brain is doing the job you assigned it. Meanwhile, the opportunities are there, the trustworthy people are there, the path forward is there. You're just looking for red. Sincero, with her spiritual framing, calls this frequency. She says the universe matches whatever vibration you put out, and you can call it whatever you want. The universe, source energy, God, the vortex, your own brain's attentional filter. The mechanism is the same. What you focus on becomes your reality, because you can only notice what your focus has tuned you into. There's an old Hindu story Sincero loves. A woman goes deep into the forest because she wants to meet the god Krishna. She sits down, she closes her eyes, she prays with everything in her, and Krishna actually shows up. He walks down the path. He stands right next to her. He taps her on the shoulder, and without opening her eyes, she tells him to go away, because she is very busy meditating on a very important goal. We do this constantly. We are so wrapped up in our heads about the thing we want that we miss it walking down the path toward us. We are so busy looking for red, we don't see the yellow lying everywhere. And here's where Sincero's idea gets practical. Once you understand that you're walking around with a filter, you can start to consciously choose what the filter looks for. You don't have to wait until everything in your life is perfect to feel good. You can feel good first, because the feeling good is the tuner. The feeling good is what makes you start noticing the opportunities that have been there the whole time. This is why, in the book, she pairs this idea with action. She says energy without action is a daydream. Action without energy is a grind. The trick is both working together. You have to believe the thing is available to you, and you have to move toward it like it's already yours. Belief is the tuner. Action is the receiver. So here's the question for you as we close this section. What have you been tuned to lately? When you wake up in the morning and your mind starts scanning, what's it scanning for? Evidence that you're behind? Evidence that other people have it easier? Evidence that this is the best you can hope for, because whatever it's scanning for, it's finding. And if that's the case, the most radical thing you could do is not change your circumstances. It's to change what you're scanning for. To wake up tomorrow and look deliberately for evidence that the life you want is already trying to reach you. You will find it because it's there. You just haven't been looking for yellow. But here's the thing. None of this works if you don't actually like the person doing the looking. Section 3. Loving the one you is. One afternoon, Jen Sincero was lying on the couch at her brother Bobby's house, watching her 2-year-old nephew waddle around the living room. Someone accidentally knocked a spoon off the coffee table, and the kid bent down to pick it up. Bobby turned to her, fascinated. "Did you see that?" He bent at the knees, kept his back straight, hips squared, stomach tight, flawless form. So Bobby starts dropping things on purpose. A TV remote, an empty beer can, a magazine, and the kid keeps picking them up in perfect form, while his uncle narrates the technique like he's calling a sporting event. The kid could flip over a car without straining his back, Bobby says. "I can barely pull up my pants without going to the hospital." And Sincero is lying there laughing. But underneath the laughing, she's having a realization. We are all born knowing how to be human. Every one of us, when we showed up on this planet, knew how to breathe properly. We knew how to bend at the knees. We knew how to cry when we needed something and stop the second we got it. We knew how to eat when we were hungry and stop when we were full. We knew how to play, how to love without conditions, how to dance without caring who was watching. So what happened? What happened is exactly what we talked about in the first section. We started absorbing messages from parents, from teachers, from kids on the playground, from television, and one by one, those messages started overwriting the things we knew at the beginning. The lesson on how to bend at the knees got replaced with "don't make a scene." The instinct to dance got replaced with "people are watching." The ability to love without holding back got replaced with "don't get hurt." And by the time we were teenagers, most of us had completed the longest, most thorough re-education campaign of our lives. We'd been taught to unlove ourselves, to question everything we were before anyone got to us. Sincero says this is the single biggest thing we get wrong as adults. We pour our money into therapy. We pour our time into self-improvement. We pour our hope into the next book, the next podcast, the next protocol, and almost none of it works long-term because we're trying to build a better life on top of a foundation that still says, deep down, "I'm not enough." You cannot manifest the life of someone you secretly don't think deserves it. So this is where Sincero, in the book, gets practical. She doesn't just say, "love yourself," and leave it there. She gives you specific things to do, and I want to walk you through the 4 that matter most. The first one is the one almost everyone resists, and it works anyway. Affirmations. I know, I can feel you rolling your eyes. Sincero says it too. In the book, she literally writes, "I wouldn't do this to you unless I had to." But affirmations work. The reason they work isn't magic. It's the same reason from the previous section. Your brain is a pattern detector. Whatever it hears most often, it starts treating as the baseline truth. And right now, the loudest voice it hears all day, every day, is your own internal monologue. The one going, "You're behind, you're tired, you're not as smart as her, you should have figured this out by now." If you don't deliberately install a different soundtrack, that one keeps playing. So you install one out loud, even when you don't believe it yet, especially when you don't believe it yet. Because affirmations aren't lies you tell yourself. They're truths you're growing into. The second one is harder. Replace the thought. Pay attention for one day to what you say to yourself when something small goes wrong. You stub your toe, you forget someone's birthday, you catch your reflection in a window. What's the first sentence in your head? For most people, it's some version of course, I'm such an idiot." And we've said that sentence so many times that it doesn't even register anymore. It's just background. Sincero says, catch it. Catch the sentence in real time. and replace it. If you look in the mirror and the first thought is yikes, consciously rewrite it to hi, gorgeous. If you snap at someone you love and the first thought is I'm a monster, rewrite it to I'm just a person working through some stuff. If you mess up at work and the first thought is I'm so behind, rewrite it to what can I learn from this? It feels stupid at first. It feels like you're lying. You're not. You're correcting the lie that was already running. The third one is the one we hide behind. Ditch the self-deprecating humor. If you're funny, and you might be, you probably already know what I'm talking about. The joke you make about being a mess, the joke about how you can't get a date, the joke about how broke you are, the joke about how nobody listens to you. Self-deprecation is the most socially acceptable way we have of bullying ourselves in public, and it's almost invisible because everyone laughs and it feels like a connection. But here's what Sincero points out. Your subconscious doesn't know it's a joke. Your subconscious is taking notes. Every time you tell a room full of people that you couldn't get a date if you demanded one at gunpoint, your subconscious is filing that away as data, as truth, as what we believe about ourselves. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your beliefs. Your beliefs become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your reality. So if your favorite joke is that you're a disaster and you spend every Saturday night alone, consider that maybe those two things are related. And the fourth one, which is the simplest and the one most of us never do. Receive compliments. Try this for a week. The next time someone compliments you, your shirt, your work, your hair, anything, don't deflect. Don't say, oh, this old thing. Don't say, oh, you're just being nice. Don't say, you should have seen me yesterday. Just say thank you. Period. Full stop. You will be amazed at how hard this is, because most of us have been trained to throw compliments off, to deflect them, to make ourselves smaller the moment someone tries to make us bigger. And every time you do that, you teach your own brain that the good things people see in you aren't true. Let the love in. Let it land, even when it feels uncomfortable. Especially when it feels uncomfortable. Because here's what's underneath all four of these. The love you are looking for from out there, from your partner, your parents, your boss, your audience, none of it lands if there's no one home to receive it. You have to become the first person who loves you, not because everyone else's love doesn't count, because nothing else's love can reach you until you do. You are the only one of you there will ever be. The world will be you-less when you're gone. And Sincero asks the question that I want you to sit with for a second. Why on earth would you deny the world its one and only chance to bask in your brilliance? Love the one you is. Section 4. Who you actually are versus who they told you to be. Okay, so you've started to notice the program. You've started to retune the filter. You've started to actually like the person doing all this work. Now comes the question that most self-help books never really answer. Who are you actually? Not the version of you your parents wanted. Not the version your high school guidance counselor told you was realistic. Not the version your partner is comfortable with. The actual you. The one that's been buried under 3 decades of well-meaning advice. Sincero says this is the question almost nobody asks themselves honestly, because it's terrifying. Because the answer might require something of you. So she gives an exercise in the book that I want you to try with me right now. Wherever you are, I want you to think about what you fantasize about. Not what you say you want when somebody asks you at a dinner party. The thing you actually fantasize about. When you're staring out the window of a train. When you're lying in bed and you can't sleep. When you're pretending to listen to somebody really boring talk your ear off. What's the daydream? For some of you, the daydream is being on a stage in front of thousands of people, and they're laughing at every word. For some of you, it's a quiet house in the country with a garden, and you can hear the kids playing outside. For some of you, it's writing a book that changes someone's life. For some of you, it's running a company, sitting at the head of a table, and people are looking at you because you're the one with the answer. Whatever it is, Sincero says, that's not a fantasy. That's a leak. That's the real you, leaking through the cracks in the version of you that you've agreed to play. Our fantasies are our realities in an excuse-free world. And the question is, why do we treat them as fiction? Why do we treat the daydream as a place we visit, instead of a destination we walk toward? Sincero is brutal about the answer in the book. She says we pretend we don't know what our calling is, when what's actually happening is we know exactly what it is, and we are horrified to face it, because it seems too big, because it would require us to risk being judged, because if we tried it and failed, we'd have to live with the fact that we tried. So we tell ourselves we don't know yet. We tell ourselves we're still figuring it out. We sign up for another certification, take another course, read another book. We make the search itself the project, so we never have to actually risk the answer. And meanwhile, the fantasy keeps leaking through. The same one, year after year, quietly waiting. Now, here's where the section gets uncomfortable. Because the next thing Sincero says is, even if you know what you want, even if you're brave enough to admit it, there's another wall you have to get past: the people who love you. When you start to wake up, when you start to actually go for the thing, the people closest to you will, in many cases, not be cheering. They will be worried, they will be confused. They will say things like, "Are you sure? Have you really thought about this? What about the kids? What about the mortgage? What about your father? What would he say?" And Sincero is careful here, and I want to be careful too. The people who love you usually mean well. They're not trying to sabotage you. They are doing what they were trained to do. They are reading from the same program you used to be reading from. They want you safe. They want you stable. They want you to not get hurt. But here's the part nobody warns you about. Watching someone else go for it can be incredibly painful for a person who has spent a lifetime building a case for why they themselves can't. Your friend who's stuck in the job she hates. Your sister who married for stability instead of love. Your father who buried his dream 40 years ago. They all built a story about why their path is the responsible one. And if you blow through your own version of that story, you become living proof that theirs was a choice, not a fate. Some of them will not be able to forgive you for that. So Sincero says, when you're in this phase, the phase right after you've decided to actually go for it, be very, very careful who you tell. Don't broadcast it. Don't try to convince the skeptics. Don't workshop your dream with people who have a vested interest in you staying small. Find the few people who are already living big lives, or who are at least trying to, and confide in them. Let the rest find out later when the thing is already real. Because here is the truth that this section ends on, and that the rest of the video is built on. You are the only one of you there will ever be. To shy away from who you actually are would leave the world viewless. That's a heavy responsibility, but it's also a permission slip. Whatever the daydream is, whatever's been leaking through the cracks for years, it's yours. It was given to you. You're allowed to want it. You're allowed to chase it. You're allowed to upset some people on the way there. And the rest of this video is about how. Section 5. Getting over your BS. When Sincero was in her 20s, she had a friend in New Mexico who took her on a road trip up into the Jemez Mountains to see a cave. Now, Sincero will tell you straight, caves don't interest her. She was there for the drive, the hike, and a great burger place near the trailhead. The cave was just a thing they had to do before lunch. It wasn't even a cave really, her friend said. More like a hole in the ground. They got there. It was in fact a hole in the ground, just big enough to crawl through. Her friend tossed her a pair of knee pads and a flashlight, got down on all fours and headed in. Sincero followed, flashlight in her teeth, hands and knees on rock. About 10 minutes in, the walls had closed around her so tight that her friend, sitting against the wall, had to bend her head forward so far it looked like she was about to start chewing on her own neck. And right then, her friend said, "Okay, now the cool part. Turn off your light." Sincero clicked off her flashlight, and she experienced, for the first time in her life, the absolute darkest darkness she'd ever known, beyond pitch black, so dark that she couldn't see her own hand pressed against her face, and she felt fear start crawling up the back of her neck. She had a choice in that moment, and she could feel it. With zero effort, and I'm quoting her here, she could have unraveled into a claustrophobic freakout of such scratching, biting, high-pitched, crazy lady screaming colossalness that they would have had to drag both of them out limp and bloodied and staring at walls for weeks, or not. The choice was hers, and in that moment, in total blackness, on her hands and knees deep underground, Sincero understood something about fear that took her decades to learn. Fear is always there. It's always going to be there. But whether you engage with it, whether you let it take the wheel, is a choice you make. Every single time. She crawled back out of the cave, calmly. She emerged into sunlight. She had sand in her ears and a sore jaw from clenching the flashlight in her teeth. But she came out with one of the most important realizations of her life. Fear lives in the future. It's about something that hasn't happened yet. The feeling of being afraid is real. Your heart rate goes up, your stomach drops, your hands shake. But the fear itself is made up because the thing you're afraid of hasn't happened. And most of the time, it never will. So here's the question this section is built on. Most of the people listening to this video are not afraid of caves, but you are afraid of something. What is it? For some of you, it's quitting your job. The fear is that you'll fail, you'll go broke, you'll have to crawl back and admit you were wrong. For some of you, it's leaving the relationship. The fear is that you won't find someone else, that you'll be alone, that you'll have wasted 10 years. For some of you, it's putting your work out there. The fear is that strangers will judge it, that people you love will judge it, that your worst critic will be proven right. And here's what Sincero wants you to notice about all of those fears. Every single one of them is about something that hasn't happened. Every single one of them lives in an imagined future, and every single one of them is technically optional. Now, she is careful not to be glib about this in the book, and I want to be careful too. The feelings are real. The stakes are real. Quitting a job that pays your rent is not nothing. Ending a marriage is not nothing. We are not pretending fear is silly. We are pretending fear is the boss, because it isn't. It just acts like it is. Sincero writes about something called the crab effect, and once you hear about it, you'll see it everywhere. If you put a bunch of crabs in a bowl, and one of them tries to climb out, the other crabs will pull it back down. They won't help it escape. They won't push it over the edge. They will reach up and drag it back. This is what fear does in a community. We've made it a habit to smear our fear and worry all over each other, and then we pat ourselves on the back for it, because we tell ourselves it's how we show we care. Your friend says, "I'm taking out a loan to start my business," and the first thing out of your mouth is, "Are you sure?" Your sister says, "I'm quitting my job to travel for a year," and the first thing out of your mouth is, "But what will you do for money?" Your cousin says, "I'm getting married," and the first thing out of your mouth is, "Isn't it too soon?" We pull each other back into the bowl, and we call it love. The single most freeing thing you can do, and Sincero is firm on this, is stop participating in the crab pull. Both ways. Stop letting other people's fear about your dreams become your fear about your dreams, and stop smearing your fear about their dreams all over them when they bring you their excitement. Because here's what's actually on the other side of the cave. You feel the fear, you see the fear, you acknowledge that the fear is doing its job, it's trying to keep you safe, and then you do the thing anyway. You crawl back toward the light. You sign the papers, you quit the job, you send the email, you ask the question, and the part nobody warns you about, the part that's almost unfair, is that the second you actually do the scary thing, the fear evaporates. It just dissolves. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to defeat it. You just have to act before it has time to negotiate. Sincero quotes Helen Keller, who said it as well as anyone has. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. To keep our faces toward change and behave like free spirits in the presence of fate is strength undefeatable. On the other side of your fear is your freedom. Every single thing you actually want, every single dream that's been leaking through the cracks of your life for years, it's sitting on the other side of a fear. The fear isn't the obstacle. The fear is the entry fee. So the only real question is the one Sincero asked herself in the dark. Is your fear greater than your faith in the unknown and in yourself? Or is your faith greater than your fear? Because whichever one you pick, that's the one your life is going to be built around. But knowing what you want, loving yourself enough to chase it, and pushing past the fear, none of it amounts to anything without the one move this entire book is built around. Section 6. The Almighty Decision. When Henry Ford was building his car company in the early 1900s, he had this idea for an engine. He wanted all 8 cylinders cast in one solid block of metal. I have no idea what that means mechanically, but apparently at the time it was a wild ask. So he gathered his engineers, the smartest mechanical minds money could hire, and he told them what he wanted. They looked at him like he was insane. They said, "Henry, you don't understand. That's not how engines work. You can't do that." He said, "Do it anyway." So they went off grumbling and they worked on it for months. And they came back and said, "We have proven it. It cannot be done." He said, "Do it anyway." So they went off again. They worked on it for a year. A full year of the best engineering minds available throwing themselves at this problem. And they came back in tears, basically, and said, "Henry, we've tried everything. It is mathematically impossible." They had proof. He said, "Do it anyway. I don't want to see your faces until you bring me what I want." And then, somewhere in that lab, somewhere between throwing chairs and making fart noises every time someone said the word Ford, the engineers did the impossible. They built the V8 engine, the way Henry Ford had described it. The thing that was, by every metric available, not possible. Now, here's what Sincero wants you to notice about that story. Henry Ford was not a smarter engineer than the people working for him. He didn't have a better engineering education. In fact, he didn't even finish the 6th grade. The people he was bossing around had PhDs. They had decades of experience. They had data. They had proof. What Ford had that they didn't was a decision. He had decided. They were trying. And Sincero says this is the difference between people who change their lives and people who spend their entire lives wanting to. Most people, when they say they've decided something, they haven't. What they've actually done is sign up to try until it gets too uncomfortable. Sincero confesses something in the book that I think a lot of us will recognize. A few years ago, she committed to a week of daily yoga. She paid for the class. She showed up, she put her mat down. And on day 1, when the instructor asked if anyone in the room had an injury she should know about, Sincero raised her hand. She heard herself explaining that she had just gotten the cast off her broken elbow, and she was going to need to take it really easy. The problem was, and I'm quoting her, she'd had a cast. The cast had come off 8 months earlier. She had paid money to go to class. She had shown up to class. And then she had lied about a fake injury, so she didn't have to actually do the class. She spent the rest of the week napping on her mat and making a wincing in pain face whenever the instructor looked her way. That's most of us, with most of our goals. We have signed up to try until it's uncomfortable. We have not decided. So what is the difference actually? What separates Henry Ford from Yoga Mat Jen? A real decision is one you don't renegotiate. Sincero is firm on this. Once you've actually decided something, you stop putting it back on the table. You stop weighing whether today is a good day for it. You stop discussing whether you still want it. The decision is closed. Everything after that is just execution. She uses her own quitting smoking as the example. She says when she really decided to quit, she stopped negotiating. If a thought came up that said, well, what's the harm in just one? She shut it down before it finished, because the second you let the negotiation happen, you're already losing. The decision has to be sealed off from your own future arguments. And here's the thing she says that I want to read to you almost directly, because it's one of the cleanest sentences in the book. Sincero writes that successful people make decisions quickly and change them slowly. Indecisive people do the opposite. They take forever to decide, and then they redecide constantly. So how do you actually get good at this? She gives a couple of practical moves. The first is practice on small things. If you're a chronic waffler, the next time you're at a restaurant, give yourself 30 seconds to pick from the menu. Once you've picked, no changing your mind. Once the waiter walks away, you eat what you ordered. The next time you're shopping for something online, give yourself 20 minutes of research and then buy. The point isn't whether you make the perfect choice. The point is to break the habit of being a deer in the headlights every time life asks you to commit. The second move is eliminate the negotiation process from your big decisions. Once you've decided to quit drinking, the question is closed. Once you've decided to leave the job, the question is closed. Once you've decided to stop dating that person, the question is closed. You don't sit there at 3 in the morning relitigating. You acknowledge that the thought has come up. You note that it's just the big snooze trying to drag you back, and you do not engage. Decisions are not up for negotiation. And the last thing, and this is the one that sounds simplest, but might be the hardest, you have to stick. Sincero spent years interviewing entrepreneurs for a magazine, and she says she asked every single one of them, what's the secret? What separates the people who make it from the people who don't? The answer was almost always the same: tenacity. Be the last person standing. Wear down your obstacles and your excuses and your fears and your doubts until they get tired of fighting you. She lists in the book a kind of hall of fame of famous decisions that look stupid for a long time. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Steven Spielberg, a high school dropout, was rejected from film school 3 times. Thomas Edison ran more than 9,000 failed experiments before he made a working light bulb. Beethoven's music teacher told him he was talentless and would never compose anything worth hearing. Fred Smith wrote a paper at Yale outlining his idea for an overnight delivery service. He got a C. He went on to build FedEx anyway. The only failure is quitting. Everything else is just gathering information. So here's the question. What have you been trying but not deciding? What have you been wanting but not committing to? What's the V8 engine you've been negotiating with yourself about for the last 5 years? Because if you can locate that, if you can name the one thing you've been signing up to try until it's uncomfortable, and you can make the move from trying to deciding, that is the move that changes your life. And once you've made that move, once you've actually decided, there's one more thing the book is firm about. Because deciding without acting is just a fantasy with better posture. Sincero closes the book by talking about the thing most people refuse to do once they've decided, which is the thing that actually creates the result. Section 7. Money, Manifestation, and Hell-Bent Action. A few years before Sincero became a best-selling author, she was driving around Los Angeles in a 23-year-old convertible junker. The roof leaked, the grille was missing, the back window was duct-taped shut, the front tire went flat every 3 days, and one day, in the middle of a historic Los Angeles rainstorm, the kind where houses slide down hillsides and the city basically shuts down, she was driving to the grocery store with a trash bag under her body to keep her butt dry and an old t-shirt slammed in the door to keep the rain from pouring in. She sat in the parking lot, soaked, and thought, okay, maybe it's time for a new car. So she went car shopping, and she narrowed it down to 2 options. The Honda CR-V, reliable, reasonably priced, decent gas mileage, comfy, a perfectly excellent little SUV, the car a sensible adult would buy, and the Audi Q5, leather seats, a sunroof the size of the actual roof, a stereo she describes as designed by God himself, sexy, flashy, expensive, pretentious, terrifying. She agonized for weeks. She test drove the Honda 10 times trying to convince herself it was the one. But every time she sat in it, something in her gut said, "You're settling again, just like you settle for everything else." And here's the moment in the book that I want you to hear in her own framing, because it's the cleanest articulation of what this book is actually about. She writes, "It wasn't about a car. It was about whether I was going to keep being the kind of person who takes what she can get, or finally become the kind of person who creates exactly what she wants." She bought the Audi. Now, here's where most people hearing this get nervous, because they hear that and they think, oh, this is one of those manifest your Lamborghini books. This is one of those just believe and the money will appear books. And it isn't. Sincero is clearer than that. She didn't have the money when she bought the car. She bought it anyway. And then, and this is the part, once she had committed to being the kind of person who drives that car, she almost immediately figured out how to pay for it. Not because the universe magically deposited the money, because the decision changed who she was operating as. She raised her prices. She stopped accepting clients who didn't value her. She stopped behaving like someone who scrapes by, and the money started showing up through her own work at a level that matched the version of her who was driving that car. This is the trick at the heart of the book. Most people think they need to wait until they have the money before they can become the person who deserves it. Sincero is saying you've got it backwards. You have to become the person first. Then the actions of that person produce the money. And Sincero is honest about something that I think a lot of self-help books skip. She says, your relationship with money is not a math problem. It's not even really about money. It's about your identity. What you secretly believe you're worth. What you secretly believe is available to people like you. She gives an example in the book of a client of hers, a bartender and a poet, barely scraping together enough money to buy a plane ticket to Italy. The bartender goes to Tuscany on vacation, and she walks past a house for sale, and she falls, completely, hopelessly, in love with this house. She knows in her gut that this is her house. Now, she has nothing. Her bank account is empty. Tumbleweeds. She doesn't speak Italian. She's not an Italian citizen. She has never owned a home in her life. By every reasonable standard, this is not her house. She asks the owners to take it off the market anyway. She tells them she's going to figure it out. She flies home. Everyone she tells thinks she's insane. Her parents are worried. Her friends are concerned. She has no idea how she's going to do this, but she has decided. And somebody eventually suggests, what if she pre-rents blocks of time in the house? People pay for their stay a year in advance. She uses that money to buy the house. She finds out it's illegal in Italy. She tries other things. She finds out it's actually not illegal. And to make a long story short, she pre-sold enough rentals, borrowed the rest, and bought the villa. She's owned it for years now. She's thinking about buying a second one. None of that happens if she waits for the money. All of it happens because she decided first. So how do you actually move money differently in your own life? What does this look like when it's not a story about a car or a villa, but the bank account you opened this morning? Sincero gives 3 moves. First, get specific. Not, I want more money. That's a wish. Specific is, I need $87,000 by December to put a down payment on a house in this neighborhood. Specific is, I need $12,000 over the next 4 months to fund my certification and quit my job. Specific is something you can actually move toward. Vague is something you can hide behind forever. Second, make it urgent. Sincero points out that you've already proven you can manifest money fast when you have to. When the rent is due and you have no idea how you'll pay it, you somehow do. When the car breaks down and you need the repair to get to work, you somehow find the money. The check arrives, the freelance job appears, you sell something, you ask for help. The constraint forces clarity, and the clarity forces action. The trick is to bring that same urgency to your dreams, not to wait until your back is against the wall, to put it against the wall yourself, on purpose, in service of something you actually want. And third, take what she calls hell-bent for glory action. This is the part most people skip. They get clear on what they want, they raise their frequency, they believe, and then they sit on the couch and wait for it to arrive. It doesn't arrive. Sincero is fierce about this in the book. Manifestation without action is fantasy. Action without belief is grinding. You need both. You need the absolute conviction that the thing is yours, and you need to be moving toward it every single day like a person whose life depends on getting there. Because in some real sense, your life does. The bartender didn't wait for the money. She didn't sit in a Tuscan field and visualize. She got on planes. She made phone calls. She did the research on Italian property law. She talked to her friends. She failed several times, and she kept going. That's what hell-bent for glory action looks like. It's not glamorous. It's not the part of the journey anyone tells you about. It's the unsexy middle, where you're calling, emailing, showing up, getting rejected, course correcting, and refusing to quit. But it's the only part that actually creates the life. Key takeaways. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. So before we close, let me give you the 7 things from this book that I want you to actually walk away with. Not as a list to memorize, as a small set of moves you can start making this week. The first one, and this is the foundation everything else stands on. Your beliefs about money, love, success, and what's possible for you. Most of them were not chosen. They were installed before you could argue back. So the first move is awareness. The next time something in your life isn't working, ask yourself, what does the part of me that built this think it's protecting me from? You can't change what you can't see. The second one, your attention is the most valuable thing you own. Whatever you focus on, you find more of. If you walk around scanning for evidence that you're stuck, you'll find it. If you walk around scanning for evidence that the life you want is reaching for you, you'll find that too. Your filter is the choice. Make it consciously. The third one, the work you do externally, the courses, the strategies, the side hustles, none of it will hold if internally you don't believe you deserve what you're chasing. Self-love is not a luxury. It is the floor that everything else stands on. Start with affirmations you don't believe yet. Replace the cruel sentences your brain runs by default. Stop using self-deprecation as a personality and let compliments land. The fourth one, what you fantasize about when no one is watching is not a fantasy. It's the real you leaking through. Stop treating your daydreams as fiction. They are not entertainment, they are a leak. The fifth one, fear is permanent. Fear is not going anywhere. The question is not how to make it disappear. The question is whether you act before it has time to negotiate. The thing you most want is sitting on the other side of a fear. The fear is the entry fee, not the obstacle. The sixth one, there is a difference between wanting to change your life and deciding to change your life. Wanting can be done sitting on the couch. Deciding means you have stopped putting it back on the table. Pick the one thing you've been trying but not deciding, and decide. And the seventh one, the order of operations matters. Most people wait until they have the money to become the person who deserves it. The order is the other way. You become the person first. You take the actions of that person, and the result shows up because of who you've started being. None of this is complicated. All of it is hard, because the resistance isn't intellectual. It's the part of you that has been running the show for 30 years and does not want to give up the wheel. But the part of you that's listening to this, the part of you that read the title of this video and clicked on it, that part already knows something has to change. That part already has a fantasy that's been leaking through for years. That part already knows which window you've been slamming yourself against. All you have to do is turn around. The door has been open the whole time. Closing. Sincero closes the book with a story about her grandmother, Nana. Her grandmother, on her mother's side, lived to be 100 years old. In her lifetime, Nana saw the invention of the phone, the car, the television, human flight, the computer, the internet, rock and roll, the atomic bomb, the moon landing, the cloning of a sheep. By the time she was very old, Sincero says she'd basically thrown in the towel on ever being surprised by anything again. One afternoon, the family took her to lunch at a restaurant on the top floor of a hotel. They all got into the elevator. The doors closed, but somebody accidentally pressed the button for the floor they were already on. So the doors closed, and then immediately opened back up, on the same floor. And Sincero says she watched her tiny 100-year-old grandmother, in her pearls, in her cardigan, in her sensible heels, step out of that elevator, patting her hair, believing she had just been instantly transported up 45 floors. And as she walked down the hallway toward the restaurant, she just muttered to herself, quietly, "Why not? Why not?" After a century of watching the impossible become normal, phones, planes, computers, the moon, why would she be surprised by one more thing? Why wouldn't an elevator just teleport you? At 100 years old, after that much evidence, anything was possible. And I think about that little old lady all the time, because I think she is the answer to almost every question this book asks. Why not? Why not start the thing? Why not send the email? Why not have the conversation? Why not ask for what you actually want? Why not believe the daydream is a destination instead of a fantasy? Why not become the person you've been waiting to be? We started this video with a bird slamming itself against a window with the door wide open behind it. I told you it was a story about how most people live, but here's the thing about the bird. The bird couldn't turn around. The bird didn't have the equipment for it. The bird could see the sky, but it could not understand the room. You can turn around right now. You can stop slamming yourself against whatever window you've been beating yourself against. The job, the relationship, the version of you that keeps not working, and you can look behind you, and the door, in almost every case, has been wide open the whole time. You just have to be willing to walk through it. So here's my question for you before I let you go. What's the door you've been refusing to see? What's the thing you already know you need to do that you've been calling something else? Research, preparation, waiting for the right time? What's the one decision you've been signing up to try until it gets uncomfortable instead of actually making? Sit with that for a minute. After this video ends, don't push past it. Don't get busy. Don't open another tab. Just sit with it. The answer is already there. You already know. If this book is calling to you, and the fact that you watched 40 minutes of a video about it suggests it is, read the whole thing. The voice is profane, irreverent, and laugh out loud funny in ways I cannot do justice to in a summary. Sincero wrote it from inside her own struggle, before she'd figured most of it out, and the result is one of the warmest, kindest, funniest kicks in the arse in modern self-help. The full book is linked below, both the Amazon paperback and the Audible audiobook narrated by Sincero herself, which I genuinely recommend because hearing her read it adds an entire dimension. If this video meant something to you, the best thing you can do is hit subscribe. It helps me keep making these. I read every comment, so tell me down below what the door is, what you've been slamming yourself against, what you're going to decide this week. You are not the bird. You are the person who sees the bird. You are a badass. Until next time.